Hello and welcome to Communication Steroids, the podcast. I'm Roger Pike, and with me today, as usual, is my sidekick, my Festus, my Igor.
What's up, Festus? Well, Marshall. Hey, this is Tim Gonzo Gordon, and yeah, it's nice to be here with you again, Roger. This is our weekly get-together, which we do. We actually live about 10 miles apart or so, and we sort of congregate, if two people can congregate, in the basement studio here at Gonzo Dex Productions, which is responsible for the Communication Steroids podcast, which is published weekly. Now, we really try and make an effort to make it every week and put our newsletter out every week to steer people to our blog and let people know what we're doing out there, and always trying to reach out to do more things. Podcasting, similar but much different to radio. Now that you've been podcasting with me for a few months, I'm just curious what your impressions are.
Well, in radio, everything is so much in the now. And podcasting, of course, we are in the now, and we have produced things that were real time, but some of it's recorded, and that's not the same. And of course, you also have the sense when you're in radio that you have X number of listeners per hour,
right?
And this has been established for you. And every hour or every 2 hours, that those listeners are going to turn over, so you can do those things. Plus, of course, in radio there are certain things you must do. I mean, the station manager or the production manager holds a gun to your head and say, you will do time of day every so often. You'll
get the call letters in there. You will mention our sponsor. You will do all those sorts of things. Yes.
Yeah, and
podcasting, there's really no rules.
There are no rules, and that's actually very liberating.
And what we like about podcasting beyond that is, you make your own rules, but we are sort of sticking to a convention in a lot of sense because you and I are, old radio guys, and so there's a lot of stuff we will do that harken back to that.
I think a decade in radio entitles me to call myself an old radio guy.
Well, I've got 2.5 plus. Anyway, today on this particular Communication Steroids podcast, we wanted to talk about managing your environment, not necessarily about the public speech or the presentation itself, but sort of the things that surround it.
Yeah, today we don't want to talk about content or delivery or presentation. Today we want to talk about the circumstances under which you give your presentation. And by that I mean the room, the people who are there, the tools that you're going to be using, whether you're going to have some kind of slideshow presentation or, the way that slideshows are done now, any of those kinds of things. And it's very important that you know from the beginning what's going on. I mean, just the room itself is a key factor in producing a message that people will hear. So
what would you suggest when let's say you're going to go up to Portland and do a speech at a hotel, and you're going to be in a conference room there, or a large ballroom type of situation? What kind of things are you looking for?
If I can't get to the room, then I'm at least going to contact the banquet manager and find out the size of the room, how it's going to, how the tables are going to be arranged, whether it's going to be in what they call a classrooms arrangement, or whether it's going to be the rounds, what they call the rounds, and all the way around. So find out what the arrangements of the room is going to be, and to the extent that I can, find out what the acoustics are like, where the stage is relative to the rest of the audience, where the stage and head table might be relative to the rest of the audience, so that I go in with a clear idea of where I'm going to be. Something as that you may not even think of, which can have a significant impact on how you're going to be perceived by your audience is the stage elevated? And if it is elevated, is there a lectern or a podium? And if there is a podium or a lectern, are they fixed? And where are they located? And can you get away from them? Because as useful as they can be for holding your notes and your water and your eyeglasses and all that kind of paraphernalia, they are actually divisive. They divide you from the audience. So you want to get away from them if you can. So just knowing where they are and knowing the logistics and layout of the room has a very profound impact on how your message is communicated and whether it's accepted, which, after all, is the soul of communication, and that's what you're after.
And a lot of that can be accomplished by just going to the room. If you can manage to get there at least a few hours early, if possible. If you're, for instance, if you're flying in to do a speech or a presentation, chances are you're going to be there with enough time to do that. Now, that's optimum. You can't always do that, as you mentioned. If you can't, you contact the manager and find out what you can. But if you can, check out the room, do a sound check if at all possible. And let's talk about equipment, because that is very key. There's a lot of people that I know that do speeches that have their own sort of presentation kit. They've got their own wireless mic, they've got a backup, they've got cords, they've got their laptop, they've got everything, and they take it with them.
And very often a banquet room will have all that stuff, but you don't want to rely on it. You want to rely on stuff you know is going to work. And that stuff, the only stuff you know is going to work is the stuff you bring with you.
And if sometimes you go through a number of items before you get to the one that really accomplishes what you want to accomplish. A lot of wireless mics, for instance, don't have the connection. They'll fuzz out. The connection will not be there. Or they won't sound good, or you won't sound good in them, even though they may sound good for somebody else. So a lot of that, what the equipment is in a sense a trial and error sort of thing.
It really is. It really is a trial and error sort of thing. But you definitely want to know that it's working. I mean, the laptop that you bring with you, the PowerPoint presentation, the programming, the projector. This can all be part of the kit that you take with you to every presentation because you know the stuff's going to work.
If you know it, there's no learning it on the fly or sitting down and going, okay, where's the start button? How do you turn this on? All that stuff. You've done this thing 100 times or 50 times or whatever the number is, and so you know your equipment. And I think the final thing we really need to mention is the people that you're going to be talking to.
The folks you're going to be talking to. I mean, is it a Kiwanis Club? Is it the board of directors for Chrysler? Who are you going to be talking to, and how are they going to be dressed, and what are they going to expect you to dress like? What they're anticipating from you as a speaker or as a presenter, all of those things are vital. The kind and type of humor that you might use as an icebreaker varies based upon the audience or the crowd that you're going to be talking to.
One thing, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say that, and that is absolutely critical. The wrong joke to the wrong crowd absolutely kills any chance of communication you may have. And I know this for a fact because
you've done this.
I've done that.
Well, you know what I've done is to warm yourself up to them. Let's say you get there early, which you should. So that before you go on to speak, you've mingled a bit, you've talked to some folks, you hopefully met some of the key players there, and you've met Joe and Phil and Don, and you can go up there on stage and say, maybe you're 5 or 10 minutes into your presentation, you can say, in fact, I was talking to Don in the back there before I came on here, and he told me that what you guys do here is really, and then you can have a key point that relates exactly to what they're talking about. Boy, does that really hit a home run with them.
Everybody has a word that they consider to be the most, to them, personally, the most beautiful word in the English language, and that word is their name. If you can use people's names in your presentation, local folks' names, you are an absolute home run. So, in fact, here's an example of that. I did an interview, a one-on-one interview, during the absolute height of his popularity with Garth Brooks. And Garth walked into the interview wearing a Portland Trailblazers cap. And, of course, that's the local sports team during the season in which I interviewed him. And I looked at him because it was a one-on-one interview and because he is a real down-to-earth kind of guy, and I could feel like I could get away with it. I said, well, you must be a Blazers fan. And he smiled at me and looked at me and he said, no, the advance man handed me the hat when I walked into the interview. Good advance man.
Good advance man. Yes, exactly. Well, that wraps up this Communication Steroids podcast. Roger, appreciate you coming on board, and we'll do this again next week.
I'm the announcer today, Tim, so I appreciate you coming on board, and we will do this again next week.